Isn't that what we want? To be able to welcome each day like we're seeing it for the very first time. Like it's just so special, so precious, that we can wake up and have clear vision and see something wonderful and amazing every single day. We can actually do that every moment, because every moment is a new beginning, a new opportunity for us to see what's possible, what's beautiful, what's meaningful, every single moment. So when we talk about opening our spiritual eyes, it's not something we do in this world. Spiritual vision is not of this world. We are spiritual beings having this glorious, interesting, fill in the blank. Things are coming up, I know. It's all of it. And it's all precious for us. But this world is here to teach us, but we are spiritual beings having this human experience. And to see with spiritual eyes, Jesus would call it going to the inner room. It's at the center of our being where our spirit and our humanity meet, our divinity and humanity meet right here. So the starting point to see with spiritual eyes is not getting corrective lenses or LASIK or some wonderful eye drops. It's about going to the place within us, going to that place inside, right here. And sometimes that can be painful. It can be scary. Because when we journey through that mind of ours, that mind that goes blah, 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 that mind that keeps, the Buddhists call it the monkey mind. Now, we can train the monkeys, but it takes a lot of work. So when we go within to find those spiritual eyes, which are the eyes of God, the eyes of love, we can run into these monkeys that pull us off into past painful experiences, go na 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 na, or they take us into the future. They go, these fearful thoughts, and it gets our mind in a state of anxiety and confusion. Have you ever been there? Are you in that place right now? I know, because it's something we have to practice, we have to work on. When Martine was saying so beautifully, going to the beach and doing yoga, these are mindful things that bring us closer to Spirit, closer to God. And when you're in that place of that's what I said, waking up in the morning, seeing for the very first time, going outside to a place you've been, being awed by the wonder and beauty. That's the spiritual vision that comes from the inside out. Jesus, who talked about the inner room, that place where we meet God, the inner room, he said only the pure in heart can see God, know that peace that passes understanding is what he called it. That's what we find in this inner room. And so, what is purity? What is the pure in thought? Well, I'm sure we all have our own ideas, our spiritual practices that help purify our minds and our bodies to keep us in the present moment, that keep us present to Spirit, present to ourselves, present to each other. And we all have our practices. But Jesus explained it when he was asked, "Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law?" The greatest. And this is what I think we'd say is purity of heart. Jesus said, the first and most important commandment is to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. That is the first and the most important, but the second is like to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those are the eyes of Spirit, the purity of heart, the eyes of love. But do you wonder why it's so hard to have spiritual vision? You have to love everybody all the time. And that's not an easy call, because we have parts of us, that feel much better We get trapped in those old thinking, and we feel better when we're ignorant, and we can blame other people for our problems, don't we? I feel better about it sometimes. It's so much easier to blame somebody else when life isn't going right. Yet we know truly that the answers we have and what we need are within us. I'm going to tell you something. Ernest Holmes, I told you, synthesized a lot of ancient wisdom, new thought, philosophy, religion, all of this together, and science, to create religious science or science of mind. He looked at a lot of the old philosophers and a lot of the wisdom, so these teachings are not new. We're just slow learners. 2,400 years ago, Plato, who was one of the most renowned philosophers ever in ancient Greek, he opened the first institutionalized higher education, Institute of Higher Learning, his school of thought in the academy. And he knew that our human perception caused us not to see reality in the right way. He knew that we had to train our thought to see something bigger. And he wrote a long dialogue called The Republic, but there's a part of it, the allegory of the cave, that talks very, very clearly about why it's so hard for us to see from a higher vision. Why it's so hard, because we've been trained to see in a different way. It takes practice, it takes discipline. For you and me to see with these spiritual eyes, it takes belief, it takes faith, and it takes acceptance of things we can't see in physical form, of something greater. So in this allegory of the cave, where Plato is really, he has an allegory, a metaphor for this thing about having a warped perception of reality. And he talks about this big cave, and there's an opening at one end, but it has prisoners in it, prisoners that are chained, and they've been there for a long, long time, maybe since birth, I don't know, but they've been there and they're chained, and they can't move their heads. And the only thing they can see is the back wall of the cave. And behind them, there's kind of a raised platform, is a fire that's burning that has some dim light in the cage. And there's a walkway in front of the fire. And on the walkway, these puppeteers are holding puppets of animals and plants and different objects. Now, the prisoners can't see the puppeteers or the fire. All they can see are the shadows on the wall. Well, think about it. Their reality is the shadows on the wall. That's their truth. And they would be there and they'd make games of how to name these shadows and try to guess which one would come next. Now you can think about it. I mean, there's so many layers to metaphors. Jesus did the parables, so there's so many layers to stories. You can think about these puppeteers, who they might be controlling people's minds. I mean, we all have our ideas, if it's the culture, if it's the media, if it's our family, if it's politicians and government, whoever it is, but they're all, those are the people that are training minds to think a certain way. But there was a strong man who came into the cave and undid one of the prisoners' chains and dragged him out of the cave. Now there's a place in the story that suggests someone else had the chains taken off out also, but they wouldn't leave, because how many people want to remain in their ignorance? It's more comfortable to stay stuck. You don't have to raise your hand. You're here. You're here. But remember, it takes a lot of faith and courage and confidence to go out. Well, think about if you'd been living in the darkness or semi-darkness for a really, really long time. To go outside and see the sun and the light, and you'd see life as it is here. This prisoner was blinded by the light. He couldn't see. And that happens to us sometimes when we first hear these universal truths of life. We can't see, we can't hear, we can't make sense of them. And it took him a while to adjust. And finally, when he adjusted, he looked around and he did see beauty and meaning and he realized the way he was perceiving reality was very limited. It was the wrong way, and he saw a greater truth. And that's what you and I are really called in our growth process to do. It's inside every one of us. I don't know if this is true, but I think the one thing we all need to really see the truth, because it's already there. It's already inside us. We already know it at a deep level. We need the passion and the commitment to see a bigger way, to go from the lesser to the higher, to transcend the old to the new. And so this healing light that's in every one of us, Jesus also said, you are the light of the world. And we are, but we don't claim it. We don't claim that that's our truth. It's already in there. And we run around stumbling in the dark, trying to find the truth, hollering at people that we don't think are right, doing all this instead of waking up to a greater understanding. But Plato's story doesn't stop there. You see, there's two things we need to do once we find a greater reality. And as Martine said, this learning process doesn't stop. We keep growing and knowing more and more. We have to practice the presence, the power. We have to keep doing our work to keep us awake and in alignment with the truth. And as I said, when we go within, we're going to bump into the beliefs and the thoughts and our actions that aren't in alignment with what is good and right and true. And if we own them, we can transcend them and heal them, because the light is always more powerful than the dark. Love dissolves hatred. Love dissolves fear. Confidence that we know there's something greater, a power we can't see in the invisible form. We can see the workings of the power, but that confidence that there's a power for good in the universe greater than we are, and we can use it, that alone will give us the confidence to shove aside, push aside, brush aside the doubts, the fears, the worries, the past, and just glean from that the goodness. So we have to practice the presence. But in Plato's story, the prisoner that was now awakened had to go back to the cave. He had to go back to the prisoners. He had to teach what he learned, because inside all of us there's a teacher that wants to teach. When we have a better experience, when we know something more, when we find more beauty and meaning and love and light in our life, we want to share that with others, right? So he goes back in the cave, and he wants to tell them about all he's learned and everything he knows. And they think he's nuts. They think he's gone crazy. Have you ever experienced that, when people think you're off your rocker? I have a whole section of my family that thinks I'm off my rocker. And the good thing is, I really don't care, because I just love them anyway from afar. And know someday they'll love me too. But you can't always teach people what they're not willing to learn. We can be an example. We can share our light without any words. But you think how many of our beautiful beings that are on our wall have been punished for having bigger visions for life, for loving more deeply, for caring in bigger circles. So the prisoner went back and did the best he could. Ernest Holmes said, teach and practice, practice, teach. That's all we're made for. That's all we're meant to do forever and ever. And that's the spiral circle of life, growing and expanding upward. At this time, I'd like to invite up first of all, before that, I want to say a few thank yous, because our Adventure in Spirit program is really about awakening all of us to open our spiritual eyes. We have a team that gets together and plans what we're going to do and how we're going to present the program. And I know Emily Van Cleve is responsible. She and Jim are responsible for the title, and Emily has written their curriculum that we'll use this afternoon. So we thank you, Em. If you'll just stand up for a minute. And then you can stay standing, because we're going to have the rest of the group stand too. Vanessa Robeson and her mom Dottie Kleinman. They have done all the decorations here, the beautiful decorations in our social hall, and the decorations for our banquet, which we appreciate. Just stay standing for just a second. And Aida's been very responsible for putting together the groups, holding together the groups of people for our study groups and bringing it together. And is Griselda here? There you are in your Dia de Muertes, and Griselda's typed up all the curriculum, and Reverend Kirk's been doing the marketing. So let's just give our team a great big thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful. We thank you and appreciate all you've done and all that you still have left to do. We aren't stopping you here. But Jim Van Cleve is president of the Science of Mind Archives, and he's here to share with us about a beautiful being that has opened their spiritual eyes and certainly been here to teach and share the good that they know. So just getting in preparation for that, would you just close your eyes for a minute and put your feet on the ground, knowing that the starting point for awakening our spiritual vision is going to that place within, that spark of light and goodness, that place that knows the truth, that right where we are, God is. That aliveness that quickens our mind and heart, and curiosity expands our faith. As we go there, just open yourself to be responsive to what that spiritual vision and truth has to tell you, has to say, the desires, the passions, the faith that it guides within you right here and now. Just know right where you are, you have everything you need in this moment to open and expand and see this life, this world, in a new way for the very first time. Take a nice deep breath and let's open our eyes. We have a visitor. Oh my gosh, Jim, you brought someone new. Wow. Would you like to tell us about that?
He's a little quiet today, but, well, this picture was taken in 1953 in Sierra Madre, up near a place called Big Creek. If anybody, we're talking about 75 miles northeast of Fresno. We're talking about in the middle of nowhere, and then some. He's standing on a rock on top of a mountain. And he had a week-long seminar up there with about 400 of his colleagues and ministers and a few practitioners. And it was an incredible time. Everything he said in the seminar is recorded in a book called Seminar Lectures. And and by the way, it was a retreat, but he never used the word retreat. He used the word advance. He said, we're not going to retreat. We're going to go forward.
That's cute.
Standing on the rock, he gave a sermon, and it's known to the insiders as the Sermon on the Rock. And it was absolutely remarkable. And I have just a little bit of it I'd like to share with you, and you can get a feeling of what this is all about. Religious science is a practical philosophy of man's relationship to the universe, and we believe that it should always, and does, stand on its own feet. Ours is a simple faith. Like the rocks on which we are now standing, it is unshakable, permanent, and self-propelling, above the skyline of faith itself. Our belief rests on the divine idea that there is but one mind, one life, the mind and life of God. We're a part of that life and mind, and all of us find our abiding place in our own consciousness. The God we're looking for, we are looking with and looking at. We had a dream up here this week, a divine dream of the spreading of our religious convictions and spiritual experiences, but dreams are not enough. We must act. We must demonstrate our spiritual rejuvenation and our unshakable belief that we are one. We must not only speak, but act, and further than this, act with authority. Then and only then will the world accept and understand what we do.
And it's, okay.
And as Reverend Sandy said, adventures, if you missed last week, please come this week. If you were here last week, please come this week. There's more of this stuff that we all love.
And Jim, if you'll just stand by Ernest here, and I'm going to close with the prayer that Ernest Holmes said that ended his Sermon on the Mount, on the Rock, Sermon on the Rock. So if you'll just close your eyes and just join me. As he said, Infinite Spirit, we come here today with wide open hearts and consecrated souls, ready to carry our message of love to all humanity, knowing that we can behold the divine in every person. Henceforth, we declare our lives to be that which is true, to that which speaks of sweetness, and to live in oneness. Let us love one another. Let us love the world. Let us serve simply and deeply, leaving the shouting and tumult to others. May the vision and wisdom of nature unify us with all creation. May the exquisite song of the birds and the caress of the autumn breeze on our cheeks and the gentle warmth and radiance of the sun blend with the unspoken beauty in our own souls to make one divine and complete, perfect creation, spiraling upward into the very vaults of heaven to rest there forever. Infinite Spirit, strip our egos bare so our open hearts can find God's presence there. Teach us to love unconditionally, and let divine wisdom make us wise. And so it is. Amen. Today is the day to open our eyes and see with the heart of love. I love you all.